Welcome to the Scent of Beauty. My name is Susan, and this video is titled It Could Be Worse, Superlative to What? Part 5. Our Mind and Body Experience Relationship. How does that dynamics work? Or dynamic work? When one member is a completely visceral being that sends messages through our spinal cord many times without our consciousness or conscience involved. And I needed a couple that have similar alliance that helps us in exploring the two-prong approach that our entire being depends on our mental status and our physical practices. I mentioned in the last video the random walk because we're taking a look at a visceral being, which is the sun, our star. And the sun has a spirited nature, and that's going to help us to see our bodies, or at least be more in tune with our bodies. At the core of the sun, it's blowing up itself. Nuclear fusion is occurring. I think it's 500 million, around there, metric tons of hydrogen into helium. But the gravity outside of the sun is holding it together. So we're talking about tension. That's explosive. Our receptors, cell body, reaction at the core is as heated, almost like the sun. The sun at the core is 15 million degrees, but what is at the core of our degree? Our temperament. Temperature and temperament, they go together. When the atom breaks apart, I just want us to see how the heat increase within itself, the sun, within our stargate, within ourselves. When at the core of our being, there are a lot of crushes, things that happened to us that crushed us within ourselves. When the temperature and the pressure is rising. In the sun, it creates electrons and protons. We talk about plasma. And so with these photons, what happened is they get released, right? Countless photons, minuscule. And the process in itself is beautiful because it's converting mass into energy on an endless loop. But we could do that. What's the energy that is flowing through our bodies? What's heating us up? While we could tolerate the sentiment, it could be worse. The energy itself of defeat is trying to escape visceral feelings. And while it takes the light from the sun's surface about approximately 8 minutes to get to us here on Earth. Do you know it takes 1,000 years for a photon to get from the core to the convection zone? That's a lot of time. So it's telling us we need to examine how patient are we with our bodies? How much time do we spend on our bodies' messages, counseling the psyche of our bodies? Our bodies can be filled with turbulent tensions because it's not processed. And I want to elaborate on that. I want to talk about going through from the core of the sun to the radiative zone, because there's different zone and there's different elements when a situation experience occur in our lives. We go through different elements to process what happened to us as an individual. At least we should. So I mentioned the radiative zone, the photon that I mentioned that escaped from the core of the sun. Now it has entered the radiative zone, and it gets absorbed and spit out of the plasma particles. I think this Polish mathematician, his name is Stefan or Benash, and he said mathematics is the most beautiful and most powerful creation of the human spirit, because we could calculate, and the most powerful creation stems from how we tally up our experiences. Or do we want to stay in the radiative zone, where energy is not necessarily being generated, it's being transmitted by the radiation? Being in a bad state is like radiation going through our being. Living in the worst of it is worse. So imagine the photons just shooting through, or just trying to get through thick layer of plasma. It's thick and it's heavy, and it's just going through the radiative zone. It takes 100,000 years to get from the core to the convection zone. Now imagine how much time it's spent in the radiative zone. We're talking about looking at the years we spend going through thick relationships that hinder us in our bodies, developing mentoring bodies, just following winding courses, twisty relationship. I'm not sure, but it could be worse based on the last experience mentality. It's not so bad. Just shooting in and out of undirected courses. This is what happened in the sun. Just aimless, without a charted course. It's trying to get to the convection, but it has to travel through plasma, constantly going through series of events, loops, turns, going along for the ride. As I said, in the sun, the random walk takes tremendous time. And do we utilize our time in an effective way? The movement in the radiative zone is so fast, there is no time to think. Just pure reaction, responding. 100,000 years to cross the zone. How long does it take us to cross over based on our best interests? Moving from the random walk phase by asking ourselves, do I want to go through these particles, thick layers, barely moving in the relationship? This doesn't come from a personal preference. It comes from conditioning, a state of being, pure practice. It could be worse. Is that satisfying? But what we do some of the times is when in this zone, we try to uncouple our minds and body. A public figure once said that she was, through a public announcement, she said that we are uncoupling, we are having a conscious uncoupling from her husband, with her husband. That was stated on the divorce document. Conscious uncoupling. And it sounds intriguing, very mature. But we take the same stance when it could be worse, is the proclamation when our body is saying, but I'm in a bad state. Unconscious uncoupling of mind and body, the disconnect, releasing the message of the body, not concerted consciousness, irreconcilable feelings. What do we do with that? Do we decide to gauge our lives from a superlative spectrum, from bad to worse, back to bad again? It's not so bad, it's bad. That's fundamentally troubling. In the radiative zone, the photon is going through all of these plasma. They're going through. And in our bodies, there's a lot of feelings that's not processed, that's going through. When our only objective is trying to get through to everyone we meet, is that possible? Do you or do I have a personal preference to begin with? That eliminates wasting the time. This bypass what one without direction have to go through. The photons. Do we have to stop and meet and greet all because they're in the path that we're going through? We have another option besides the random tour, the round and about way of living. And that's why I said it in my other videos, we don't do pep talks. We introspect and examine individually our visceral feelings. The sun could never change because that is its nature. We have the ability to consciously change. We can develop a selective footpath. Herbert Spencer said, option is ultimately determined by the feelings and not by the intellect. Is it time we get in tune with our feelings? Not just, I'm feeling good, I'm feeling bad. Not those labels. Our feelings in our core, the feelings in that zone that I just mentioned, radiative zone. Where am I going and what path am I taking? Is it the random walk? Tedious? Is it essential or simply a habit? Where do I get the standard of operating? We could opt out and get into the convection zone. And that's what we're going to discuss in the next video. Being a visceral being is a gift, but there's a zone with order, more relaxed. It can get better. Welcome to the Scent of Beauty. My name is Susan. Thank you.